And again, if you have any questions about anything you've heard, any additional information or things that might be confusing, please put them in the Q&A. We'll address them as best we can before the webinar is over, and we'll also be posting a frequently asked questions on the Compete Caribbean website. So please put those questions in. So generally speaking, this program is scheduled to be 12 months long. Now, we've already started the 12-month program, so really we're talking around through about April of next year is when we anticipate the entire program to be over. Understanding we have a generalized schedule, but we also know that every corporation, every startup, every partnership is on a different trajectory. So while the schedule may shift for an individual case, the steps of the program will generally be the same. So notionally speaking, well, there we go. Notionally speaking, we're currently in the corporate participation down selection, right? So by the end of this month, we will have identified all of the existing corporations that are participating, and then moving into the work that Edmund was just describing around both evaluating the corporations for their ability to innovate, as well as the validation process around the problem that's being asked to be solved. The reason for these two is to understand what is the difficulty going to be in integrating a partner or working with partners, as well as understanding what is the potential validated impact of solving the problems that are being brought to the table. Once that process is over, we take those validated problems and we do an open call to startups and small to medium enterprises for their participation. So who out there thinks they can solve the problems that you all have identified as being significant economic drivers that you want to address? Once we do that down select, they go through a similar process from the startup's perspective to validate that helping address these problems and being a participant in these strategic partnerships is going to be economically worthwhile and viable for them. Because if it's not, then they're not a good solution for you either, right? You need them to succeed in order for you to succeed. So they go through a similar process, but from a startup's perspective. Now, when they go through that process, our intent is to have them sharing information with you and for you to be helping share information and open doors for them. At some level, the corporation will work somewhat as a mentor for the startups as they go through this process themselves. And then finally, starting in September through the end of the program is where we start looking at the collaborative solutions and relationship building associated with creating the output from these strategic partnerships. So how do we then enable these potential solutions and partnerships to grow into something that's actually scalable and usable? So from the corporation's perspective, if we go back to that blue box and look at corporate evaluation and challenge validation and say what's involved in that, it goes back to this idea of how do we get from identifying who real customer is, or what is the customer impact, what is the potential economic impact, and then in parallel with that, looking at what is the corporate innovation culture, what are your resources, processes, and values look like around innovation, and understanding what is the potential end game for you as a corporation here. Are you looking to ultimately do a acquisition? Are you looking to license? Are you looking to simply purchase a solution and move on? We're trying to understand what does that end game look like so we can appropriately match the corporation with a potential startup as we move into that phase. So with that, that's everything that we wanted to provide.